The Great Wall of China, not a single wall, but a network of fortifications stretching over 13,000 miles. It's a symbol of human ambition, a structure so vast it's been the subject of myths and legends for centuries. But have you ever wondered how it was actually built? The logistics alone are one of history's greatest engineering puzzles. This wasn't just about laying bricks, it was about conquering nature, managing millions of people, and moving mountains of material. The project spanned multiple dynasties, with construction phases lasting for hundreds of years at a time, each with unique challenges. Imagine organizing a construction project that crosses deserts, mountains, and rivers without any modern technology. The sheer amount of resources required was staggering, demanding the full power of the Chinese state to mobilize. Every single stone, every pound of rice, and every worker had to be sourced, transported, and managed with precision. This is the story of the incredible, almost impossible logistics behind one of the wonders of the world. Let's break down the 5 key logistical nightmares that the builders of the Great Wall had to overcome. First, the workforce. Who built the wall? The answer is complex, involving millions of people over many centuries. A huge portion of the labor force was made up of soldiers stationed at the frontier to both build and defend. They were organized into disciplined units, making them an efficient and readily available source of manpower for the state. Beyond soldiers, millions of commoners were conscripted. Farmers and laborers were forced to leave their homes to work. This mandatory service could last for years, placing an immense strain on families and local economies back home. Finally, a significant number of workers were convicts and political prisoners, sentenced to labor on the wall as punishment. For them, the wall was an open-air prison, with grueling work and harsh conditions as their daily reality. Organizing this diverse group of soldiers, civilians, and convicts was a monumental task for the supervisors and generals. They had to manage different skill levels, languages, and motivations across thousands of miles of construction sites. This human engine, assembled from all corners of the empire, was the first and most crucial logistical component. Next, the materials. The builders cleverly used whatever resources were available locally to minimize transportation. In mountainous regions, they quarried massive stones directly from the hillsides they were building on. These stones were split using wedges and hammers, a slow and labor-intensive process that required immense strength and skill. On the plains, the primary material was earth. They used a technique called rammed earth to create incredibly durable sections. Layers of earth were poured into wooden frames and pounded down until they were as hard as rock. For the more famous Ming Dynasty sections, they manufactured billions of standardized bricks in kilns set up near the wall. These bricks were easier to transport and handle than massive stones, allowing for faster and more uniform construction. Even the mortar was a logistical feat, often made from a mixture of sticky rice and slaked lime. This required massive quantities of rice, a staple food, to be diverted for construction purposes across the empire. Sourcing and preparing these materials on-site was a brilliant strategy to solve the first part of the transportation puzzle. But what about moving those materials? This was perhaps the single greatest logistical challenge of the entire project. There were no engines or cranes. Everything relied on the power of humans and animals, one step at a time. In the treacherous mountains, workers formed long human chains, passing heavy stones and bricks from one person to the next. This was slow and exhausting work, but it was often the only way to get materials up steep, inaccessible cliffs. They also used simple machines like wooden levers and rollers to move massive stones that were too heavy to carry. For gentler slopes, they used wooden sleds or single-wheeled wheelbarrows, which were easier to maneuver on narrow paths. Animals were also crucial. Oxen and mules pulled heavy carts on flatter ground, while goats were used to carry supplies in the mountains. Crossing rivers posed another huge problem. They had to build temporary bridges or use barges to ferry materials across. In winter, they cleverly waited for rivers to freeze, then slid heavy stones across the ice on sleds. Every single movement was a calculated effort against gravity, distance, and the unforgiving landscape itself. Building in the mountains was hard, but the desert presented a completely different set of logistical problems. Out here, there was no stone or good quality earth. The builders had to innovate with the materials at hand. Their solution was to use layers of sand, gravel, and desert reeds, a type of tough, fibrous plant. They would build a frame and lay down a layer of reeds, followed by a layer of sand and gravel. Then, they would compact this layer tightly before adding the next, building the wall up like a giant layer cake. This created a surprisingly strong and resilient structure that could withstand the harsh desert winds and erosion. The other major desert challenge was water. It was a precious resource for both the workers and for mixing materials. Supply lines had to be established to bring water from distant oases, a massive undertaking in itself. The extreme temperatures, from scorching days to freezing nights, also took a heavy toll on the workforce. The desert sections of the wall are a testament to human adaptability and the ability to engineer solutions in any environment. An army of workers needs an army's worth of food. Feeding the millions on the wall was a constant logistical battle. The daily requirement for grain, water, and other supplies was astronomical, far more than the local areas could provide. The government established a massive supply chain, a network of roads and canals to transport food to the frontier. Convoys of ox-drawn carts, each carrying sacks of rice and millet, were a constant sight on the roads. However, transporting the food was incredibly inefficient. It's said that for every 6 bushels sent, only 1 would reach the workers. The rest was consumed by the transport workers and the animals along the long and difficult journey. To solve this, the state encouraged farmers to move to the frontier, creating military agricultural colonies called Tuntian. These colonies grew crops locally, drastically shortening the supply lines and making the entire operation more sustainable. Supply depots and granaries were built along the wall to store food and equipment, ensuring a steady flow of resources. This complex system of food production and distribution was the lifeblood of the project, as vital as the stones themselves. How do you manage a project that's thousands of miles long? The answer lies in the wall's most iconic feature, the watchtowers. These towers weren't just for defense. They were the nerve center of a sophisticated communication network. During the day, they used smoke signals. Different colors and patterns of smoke could convey specific, prearranged messages. A single puff might mean a small group is approaching, while a large, continuous column could signal a major event. At night, they switched to fire signals, using the bright flames to pass messages quickly down the line. This system allowed information to travel hundreds of miles in just a few hours, a stunning speed for the ancient world. For more complex orders and reports, a system of messengers on horseback was used, relaying information between command posts. The entire project was overseen by a strict military-style hierarchy, with generals and officials managing specific sections. These commanders would use the signal network to report progress, request supplies, and coordinate efforts with neighboring sections. This blend of high-speed signals and organized command allowed for a surprising level of control over the colossal undertaking. We've talked about the logistics of material and food, but the human logistics involved a tremendous, often tragic cost. The conditions for the workers were incredibly harsh. They labored from sunup to sundown in extreme weather. In winter, they faced freezing temperatures and biting winds with only basic clothing and simple shelters for protection. Workplace accidents were common. Moving massive stones and working on high, narrow walls was incredibly dangerous. The tools they used were simple iron and wood, requiring immense physical exertion for every task. Food supplies, despite the vast logistical effort, were often inadequate, leading to malnutrition among the workforce. The remote locations meant that workers were isolated from their families for years on end, a heavy psychological burden. It's no wonder the wall is sometimes referred to as the longest cemetery on Earth. While the exact number is unknown, it is certain that an immense number of people perished during its construction. This human sacrifice is an undeniable part of the wall's story, a somber foundation for its incredible scale. The logistics didn't end when a section was finished. The Great Wall was a project that required constant maintenance. Weather was a relentless foe. Rain, snow, and wind constantly eroded the structure, especially the rammed earth sections. Garrisons of soldiers stationed along the wall were responsible for its upkeep, conducting regular patrols and repairs. This meant that the supply chain for materials and food had to be maintained long after the main construction crews left. Different dynasties would inherit the wall and often undertake massive rebuilding and expansion projects. The Ming dynasty, for example, rebuilt many earlier sections with stronger brick and stone, creating the wall we see today. This meant that the logistical machine had to be fired up all over again, mobilizing a new generation of workers. They would often recycle materials from older, dilapidated sections to build the new fortifications. The Great Wall was never truly finished. It was a living structure, constantly evolving and demanding resources. This ongoing cycle of decay and renewal was a logistical challenge that spanned well over 1,000 years. So, the Great Wall of China is more than just a wall. It's a monument to logistical mastery. It represents the absolute limit of what could be achieved with pre-industrial technology and sheer human will. From managing a diverse workforce of millions to inventing new building techniques on the fly, every step was a challenge. The complex systems of supply, transport, and communication were as impressive as the physical structure itself. It demonstrates a level of planning and state organization that was unparalleled in the ancient world. While its effectiveness as a defensive barrier is often debated by historians, its logistical success is undeniable. Today, as millions of tourists walk its ramparts, they are walking on the legacy of this incredible logistical feat. It stands as a silent testament to the countless individuals whose sweat and sacrifice made the impossible possible. The story of the Great Wall isn't just about keeping people out, it's about the immense effort required to bring everything in. A true wonder of the world, built not just with stone and earth, but with ingenuity, organization, and immense perseverance.